È vero che il primo meeting che hai avuto con il regista di Dracula Untold è stato vicino, proprio vicino a Francis Ford Coppola?
Yes, absolutely. I met with Gary Shore, our director, and we met for lunch somewhere in LA, and we were sitting and talking about the film, and he was showing me all the visuals for the film, and kind of midway through our lunch, we looked beside us, and Francis Ford Coppola was having lunch a few tables over from us. And I thought, of course, this is a sign! This is a sign that I'm supposed to be here and I'm supposed to make this movie. Of course, neither of us had the gall to go and speak with them during that lunch, but I certainly thought it was a good indication that I should be a part of this film.
E invece per Luke, questo film in anni di grande proliferazione di vampiri di tutti i tipi, questo riporta un po' l'ortodossia vampiresca, l'unico e vero conte Dracula, eppure è un po' fumettesco, è un film di Dracula ma fatto un po' con lo stile fumettesco di oggi.
Sorry, say that last bit again? What is our movie? Really? I'm not sure whether I would have compared it to a cartoon. It definitely is a fantasy film of sorts, but what's fun about this movie, which makes it different to the other stories that have been told on film of Dracula, is it's the origin story. So we deal with a bit of reality before we start dealing with the fictional character of Dracula. We deal with the man behind this very famous literary figure. And that's what was fun for me, and I think for everybody involved, is that we were telling a story that hadn't been told before, and it was the human journey which was exciting for me as an actor.
Hai interpretato dei personaggi, diciamo, da una forte caratterizzazione, penso sia a Bard sia uno dei tre moschettieri. E anche Dracula lo è. Come riesci a spostarti dal personaggio e soprattutto spesso magari i tuoi fan ti riconoscono più per il personaggio magari che per l'attore, quindi questa cosa come, diciamo, di relazione a questa possibilità. Grazie.
I think it's quite fun. I quite like the fact that I did the Mille Miglia race this year, and I was driving at Lancia earlier through these amazing little villages and towns in Italy, and we were driving so fast that I was tired and I needed a coffee, so we stopped in this tiny little village, and there was these three teenagers sitting on the steps of the church, and I parked the car, and they were sitting there. It was late at night, it was like 1 in the morning, and they came running up to me and they were like, "Excuse me, are you Bard? What are you doing in our village?" You know? I know that I'm not Luke Evans to a lot of people that see my movies. I'm one of my characters, and for these three teenage kids, I was Bard Bowman, and I was in their little village. It was a very funny night, funny Stoker story, and our story starts 400 years before Bram Stoker was even born, and so we had a very free license to tell a different story, a story that hasn't really been touched upon. And it's a fascinating story because it's the human, it's a historical figure that walked this earth in the 1400s, and his journey and his life and his relationship with his wife, the love that he has for his family and the respect he has for his people, but also the fact that he was Vlad the Impaler. I mean, he had a dark past, and as we know, he now has a dark future as well.
Buongiorno. Mi ha colpito questa frase che hai appena detto, che sei te stesso nel ruolo in quanto agitatore sociale. In che senso?
I don't know. I think we're all good agitators. I think in our time we have our moments of agitating. I don't know. I don't think I'm playing myself in High Rise, but there's some parts of me in him, and I guess that's why I was cast in the role. But I wouldn't say I was an agitator. I'm a pleasant human being most of the time. As long as I get my lunch.
That. He's very pleasant. A very pleasant person.
Salve, sono che alla testata dalla pagina ufficiale del film di Facebook, dalla pagina ufficiale di Facebook. Luke, che cosa ha in comune con il principe Vlad?
Well, I mean, I don't know that I have a lot in common with him. What I do understand about him is his journey and his experience. I mean, I see this man who's dealing with quite fundamental emotions that most of us deal with in our lives, sacrificing something for love, fighting for what is right, and heartbreak and loss and responsibility. I mean, I sort of understand all those things. I do have one thing in common with Dracula, which is the fangs. I do have my own fangs. And they're real. I didn't have them made for the movie. They were mine. I've had them all my life. And but that's as much as I have in common with him.
Faremo una domanda di dietro? Di nuovo là, Valerio Salvi.
Buongiorno, Marco Locci, mariapius.it. Volevo chiedere a Luke come ha preso il fatto che Dracula è stato riportato più come un supereroe, si vede sia dalla supervista sia dal fatto che sia in grado comunque di muoversi velocemente, abbia dei poteri che il classico Dracula ovviamente non ha mai avuto in tutte le trasposizioni cinematografiche. Come è stato approcciarsi con un tipo di Dracula così diverso? Grazie.
Well, it was fun in a way because, yes, he does have these superhero powers, but we all have to remember that Dracula is older than any superhero that's ever been written about, and the powers that he has are not things that we, the Hollywood machine, created. If you look back into historical Eastern European folklore, vampires have always had these abilities to turn into bats and turn into creatures and use the darkness to their advantage. They also have flaws, but the main things that Vlad does in this movie when he's turning into this vampire are all in the books, the history books. Many hundreds of years ago, you can read about him being able to have this insight and being able to speak to someone through their telepathy and do all of these amazing things. So, in a way, Dracula probably inspired a lot of the superhero powers that we have nowadays in movies.
Io avevo una domanda anche per la protagonista. In questo momento in cui cinema e televisione vanno un po' a braccetto, nel senso che serie TV hanno grandi protagonisti e comunque sono viste quasi quanto il cinema, lei ha spaziato molto in tutti e due i campi. Volevo sapere le sue impressioni e le differenze che ha trovato nell'uno rispetto all'altro. Grazie.
I think probably one of the most major mediums, differences between the two mediums is that television tends to be a writer-producer medium, and film tends to be a director's medium. And it's kind of the really interesting thing, because when I did a lot of television, that was what I think a lot of producers and writers were so inspired about, is the notion of writing something and seeing their material go on to television right away, as opposed to writing a film and then 10 years later it being made into an actual motion picture. And I think that directors have maybe a little more range in filmmaking, in certain kinds of filmmaking anyway, and I think that that's totally a major difference. From an acting perspective, I did a lot of television growing up in Canada, and that's kind of how I came up, and it's a very fast pace. You're going to shoot a lot of dialogue, a lot of scenes in one day, whereas filmmaking you tend to be able to take more time with it, shoot it a number of different ways. But television is a real grind.
Ciao, sono Simona Gamesurf e volevo chiedere a Luke, dato che si è parlato di supereroi e data la sua ottima interpretazione del film, mi piacerebbe vestire i panni di un supereroe nel prossimo futuro? Uno di quelli odierni, intendo.
Yeah, why not? That'd be fun. I mean, I'm good with a cape. I know. I can use a sword, which I guess superheroes nowadays don't use, but no, it must be very fun. I mean, I felt a little like a superhero in this movie. I guess, you know, he is able to use these powers, and they are superhuman powers. Excuse me. So yeah, who knows? It would be interesting. For me, it's it's not about playing a superhero or a vampire. It was about playing a character that I could bring life to and bring a story that was relatable to an audience, and so that they could understand the journey, whether they relate or whether they agree with what Vlad does in his life. They can still understand it because he's, he has flaws. He's not a perfect human being. And I think if I play a superhero, then I'd probably want to play one that has a few flaws, maybe has a dark side as well as a good one.
Ciao, noi siamo della fanpage italiana di Dracula Untold. Sara, ci puoi descrivere?
Oh my God.
Amazing.
Sara, ci puoi descrivere Luke in 3 parole?
Oh, just 2 words?
No, just 2 words. I don't know if I can describe him in just 2 words. He is lovely and generous. He's a lovely person. He cares so much about his work. He worked really hard on this film, and I think that he is an incredible leading man, and I think he makes a wonderful Dracula, and a scary Dracula, and a complicated Dracula. And then, of course, he's very generous. This was really, one of my first major studio films, and I feel really lucky because Luke was very generous with his time and with our storyline, and he was very dedicated to telling the love story side of this film. And I'm really grateful to him for that because I think we were able to create something special.
Grazie. Salve, per entrambi, prima Sara, a Roberto e di Corriere Cinema, intanto anche noi abbiamo già fondato la fanpage per te, sappilo. Allora, la domanda è come passare da
Thank you so much.
passare da 3 film con Cronenberg, direi la famiglia Cronenberg, a questo film, e poi dopo faccio la domanda a te.
I thought it would be very different and difficult and a huge departure, and in some ways it was. But I think ultimately, whether or not you have a green screen behind you, or an immaculate set behind you, or a very simple set behind you, ultimately when you're working with somebody else, everything kind of fades away, and it's about the connection that you have with that person and about the person that you're with in a scene. And so, in that sense, it really wasn't that different because it was just about finding a scene partner and trying to create something that was real and something that was compelling. And that's kind of what I found in myself.
Invece per Luke la domanda è d'obbligo, visto che hai citato la Mille Miglia, sappiamo che c'è un prossimo film di prossima uscita che è sempre di questa major, cioè il Fast and Furious, quindi da Dracula c'è qualche anticipazione se ce la puoi dare, oppure che cosa è per te anche correre con le auto, visto che hai partecipato a Mille Miglia?
I loved driving the Lancia Aurelia. It was, it had 4 gears. The 3rd gear was my favorite. I did a lot of, it was really fun. And so yeah, I do like driving fast cars. I like driving safely. But yeah, it's fun. It's fun to feel the wind in your ear. But as for Fast and the Furious 7, I know very little about the movie. As you know, I was sucked out the back of an Antonov carrier plane at the end of the Fast and Furious 6. So it'll be a very interesting movie for me to watch as much as you. But it's going to be a big one. I know that it's going to be huge. Hello. Hiya.
Allora, diciamo che nasce come attore di teatro, solo negli ultimi anni si sta concentrando maggiormente nel cinema, sul cinema, e dato che sono 2 dimensioni artistiche con dei tempi molto diversi, in quale si trova più a suo agio? Grazie.
Well, maybe you should see me on stage and then decide. Well, they're very, very different mediums. I mean, theater is live for a start, and you get to tell the whole story every night. And you have an audience, it's like you guys, and we're responding to how you're responding to us. And I think that's the wonderful thing about theater, is that it's a spontaneous, instant reaction. And that's a wonderful thing. And also you get a round of applause at the end of the evening, which is always a nice way to finish a day's work. But In film, the process is much slower, and also you finish the movie, and it can be like this movie, we finished it in November, we revisited it early in this year to do the pickups, but that's it, and then you forget about it, and you've done it, you just move on to the next job, or your life carries on, and then it's only when we start talking to you guys in the press junket that you start to relive the journey of it, and the experience of acting on stage and acting on film feels very, very different, and I feel like Sarah said earlier, doesn't matter whether it's a big film or a small film, whether you're on stage, whether you're on TV, whether you're doing an advert, whether you're in a pop video, you're telling a story. And I think personally, the way I approach the whole thing is that it doesn't matter whether there's a camera looking at you or whether there's 300 people looking at you. Your job is to be authentic and loyal to your character and to tell the story as best you can. So I try to sort of shut everything else out. So I wouldn't say either is any different. At the end of the day, it's acting, and that's what I do, and that's what we do. And yeah, simple as that.
Una domanda per entrambi. In un film di Dracula, abbiamo già detto, le ambientazioni, il luogo è tutto fondamentale perché sappiamo bene dove si svolge. Tuttavia questo film, lo stile di questo film è molto bello. Quanto ognuno di voi ha girato nelle location effettive, quanto invece era davanti a un green screen?
Well, surprisingly, there were big moments of green screen, CGI, and special effects, but we had some insanely detailed sets, huge sets. There was one set, a big hall, where the Turkish soldiers come in when we're having a big feast. That was being built a month before we started shooting, and we didn't visit it until 2 months into the film. So it was, there was a lot of work going into these sets. And then there was a tower scene with Sarah and I where she falls from the tower, and that was in the middle of a huge studio. Do you remember that?
Yeah, it was a huge studio surrounded. But we also shot on location a lot too. We shot in Northern Ireland, and we shot on Davis Mountain and Tullymore Forest at Giant's Causeway, in that river.
Well, you weren't in that river. My first day on this film was in that river, and it was very, very cold. Very, very cold. I was wet for about 12 hours.
I got to set the next day. I said, "So how was your first day?" He was like, "I was lying down face first in a river for 12 hours."
No, but I mean, I think what's brilliant about this film visually is, I think it's been done with such detail and care that it's difficult to know what's real and what's not. But you'll be surprised to know that the majority of the locations and a lot of the scenery was real.
Bene, se non abbiamo altre domande possiamo congedare Luke Evans e Sarah Gadon.
Grazie mille.